My name is Sophia Mitchell, and until 3 months ago, I was the family disappointment. Not because I had failed at anything specific, but because I had chosen a different path from what my family expected. While my sister Victoria climbed the corporate ladder at our father's investment firm, I chose to become a history professor at a small college. Another year wasted in that dusty library, my mother would sigh at every family gathering, her designer bracelets jingling as she gestured dismissively. You could have been managing millions by now, just like your sister. I had learned to smile through these comments, finding solace in my grandmother, Eleanor's quiet support. While the rest of my family chased wealth and status, she understood my passion for uncovering the past, for finding stories hidden in forgotten corners. Some treasures can't be measured in dollars, dear, she would tell me during our Sunday afternoon teas, her eyes twinkling with a secret joy I never quite understood. Now, standing in her empty bedroom 3 days after her funeral, those words echoed in my mind with new meaning. The family had gathered for the reading of her will, all of them expecting their share of the Mitchell fortune. My grandmother had been wealthy, though she never flaunted it like the rest of my family. Her colonial-style mansion housed priceless antiques and art collections, not to mention her substantial investment portfolio. Victoria sat in the leather armchair by the window, scrolling through her phone with practiced indifference. I suppose we should get this over with, she drawled, not bothering to look up. Some of us have actual work to attend to. I caught my reflection in the antique mirror. Simple black dress, minimal makeup, my grandmother's old pearl earrings. Next to Victoria's Channel suit and perfectly styled hair, I looked exactly like what they thought I was, the less successful sister. Mr. Whitman, my grandmother's attorney for over 30 years, cleared his throat and adjusted his reading glasses. Mrs. Eleanor Mitchell's last will and testament, he began, his voice steady and professional. To my granddaughter, Victoria Mitchell, I leave my summer house in the Hamptons, along with its contents and my collection of rare paintings. Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers paused over her phone screen. A slight smile curved her lips. The house alone was worth several million. To my son James and his wife Margaret, Mr. Whitman continued, I leave my investment portfolio and liquid assets, currently valued at approximately $12 million. My parents exchanged satisfied glances. This was exactly what they had expected. And to my granddaughter Sophia, I straightened in my chair, feeling everyone's eyes turn to me. I leave my personal diary, currently locked in the top drawer of my writing desk, along with the key hidden in the place only she would know to look. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. A diary? That's it? Oh, this is perfect. She turned to me, her eyes gleaming with mockery. Keep the old diary. It's worthless. I'm sure you can add it to your precious collection of dusty books. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Eleanor must have been confused near the end. Sophia, we'll make sure you get something more substantial. I stood up, my legs shaking slightly, but my voice steady. No need. Grandmother knew exactly what she was doing. I walked to her mahogany writing desk, my fingers trailing along its polished surface. How many times had I watched her write at this desk during our afternoon conversations? Well, if that's everything. Victoria stood, already reaching for her designer handbag. I need to call my realtor about the Hamptons property. Mr. Whitman folded his papers carefully. That concludes the reading of the will. However, he paused, looking directly at me. Mrs. Mitchell left specific instructions that certain documents can only be accessed after Sophia receives her inheritance. Victoria rolled her eyes. It's just an old diary, probably full of recipes and gardening notes. Come on, it's not like it contains some great secret. If only she knew how wrong she was. After everyone left, I sat alone in my grandmother's study, the afternoon sun casting long shadows through the tall windows. The diary lay before me on the desk, bound in worn leather with a small brass lock. The key, she had said, was hidden in a place only I would know to look. I closed my eyes, thinking back to all our conversations, all the little moments we had shared. Then I remembered the music box, the small silver one she kept on her bedside table, the one that played Beethoven's Ephemer Elise. Music holds memories, she used to say, and sometimes memories hold secrets. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the music box, as the familiar melody began to play. I turned it over and found a small compartment I had never noticed before. Inside lay a tiny brass key, identical to the one on the diary. The lock clicked open softly, like a whisper of the past reaching into the present. The pages were filled with my grandmother's elegant handwriting, but this wasn't just a diary of daily events. The first entry, dated 1962, began with words that made my heart stop. To whoever finds this diary, you hold in your hands the truth about the Mitchell fortune and the secret that could bring down one of America's most powerful families. I sank into my grandmother's old leather chair, my hands shaking as I turned to the next page. What I read in the following hours would change everything, not just for me, but for my entire family. The sun had set by the time I finished reading the first few entries, casting the study into shadow. I barely noticed, too engrossed in the shocking revelations flowing from my grandmother's pen. This wasn't just a diary. It was a carefully documented record of something much bigger, something that would shake my family's foundation to its core. My phone buzzed. Another message from Victoria, probably gloating about her inheritance. I ignored it, my eyes fixed on a particular passage that made my blood run cold. The Mitchell fortune wasn't built on smart investments, as everyone believes. The truth is far darker, and I've spent decades gathering proof. Now, finally, I can set things right. But it must be Sophia who carries this forward. She alone has the wisdom to use this information justly. I closed the diary, my mind reeling. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars, oblivious to the bombshell I had just discovered. Tomorrow, I would begin to unravel this mystery properly. But for now, I needed to process what I had just learned. One thing was certain, my grandmother's final gift wasn't worthless at all. In fact, it might be worth more than everything else she owned combined. And soon, my family would learn just how wrong they had been about both of us. I spent the entire night in my apartment, surrounded by papers and sticky notes, trying to piece together the incredible story contained within my grandmother's diary. My hands trembled as I turned each page, revealing a web of deception that spanned 3 generations of the Mitchell family. The truth began in 1962, when my grandfather Thomas Mitchell was just a junior partner at an investment firm. According to my grandmother's detailed accounts, he discovered that his firm was involved in massive fraud. They were running an elaborate Ponzi scheme that had stolen millions from unsuspecting investors. But instead of exposing the fraud, my grandfather did something unexpected. He blackmailed the firm's partners, forcing them to make him a senior partner. Then he used his new position to orchestrate a complex series of transactions that made him appear to be a financial genius while actually continuing and expanding the original scheme. Thomas thinks I don't know, my grandmother wrote, but I've been keeping records of everything. The coded ledgers, the offshore accounts, the forged documents. all of it. Our children believe their father built this fortune through brilliant investment strategies, but it was built on the ruined lives of thousands of people. I felt sick. The Mitchell fortune, the empire my family so proudly claimed, was founded on fraud and destruction. My father had inherited not just the wealth, but also the scheme, whether he knew it or not. The diary suggested he did, detailing meetings and conversations my grandmother had overheard over the years. A text message lit up my phone. Victoria again. Hey bookworm, already finished Grandma's bedtime stories? I ignored it, focusing instead on a series of numbers my grandmother had meticulously recorded. They appeared to be account numbers, dates, and transaction amounts, all carefully documented with corresponding names and locations. She hadn't just kept vague notes, she had compiled evidence. The next morning, I called in sick to the university and drove to a safety deposit box location mentioned in the diary. My grandmother had left me a key years ago, telling me to keep it safe. Just in case, she had said with that knowing smile of hers. Now I understood why. The safety deposit box contained exactly what I expected. Dozens of folders filled with original documents, photos, and even old recordings. My grandmother hadn't just written about the fraud. She had spent decades gathering concrete proof. But the most shocking revelation came near the end of the diary. My grandfather hadn't died of a heart attack as everyone believed. My grandmother's entry from that night told a different story. Thomas found my records tonight. He was furious, threatening to destroy everything I'd built, to ensure I'd have nothing if I ever revealed the truth. But in his rage, he wasn't watching his step. The fall down the stairs was an accident, but I couldn't call for help immediately. I had to secure the documents first. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. I sat in my car outside the bank, trying to process this information. My grandmother had chosen to protect the evidence rather than possibly save her husband's life. She had carried that burden for decades, waiting for the right moment to expose everything. As if on cue, my phone rang, my father's name flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He had been calling regularly since the will reading, probably feeling guilty about my worthless inheritance. If he only knew what I now held in my hands. That evening, I met with Mr. Whitman in his office after hours. As my grandmother's attorney, he had to have known something. His grim expression when I walked in confirmed my suspicions. I wondered when you'd come, he said, gesturing for me to sit. Your grandmother left specific instructions about what to do when you discovered the truth. He pulled out a thick envelope from his safe. Inside was a letter addressed to me in my grandmother's handwriting, along with a USB drive and several more documents. My dearest Sophia, the letter began, if you're reading this, you found the evidence I've spent a lifetime collecting. You're the only one I trust with this information because you've never been seduced by the power of wealth. You understand that true value lies in truth and justice, not in dollars and cents. The letter went on to detail exactly how I could use this information. The USB drive contained digital copies of everything, including recorded conversations and scanned documents. My grandmother had also set up a trust in my name, separate from the family fortune. Clean money she had earned through her own investments, meant to support me through what was to come. You have a choice, the letter concluded. You can burn everything and let the lies continue, or you can expose the truth and force our family to face the consequences of their actions. Whatever you decide, know that I believe in you, and I'm sorry for the burden I've placed on your shoulders. Mr. Whitman leaned forward, his expression serious. Your grandmother also left instructions about timing. The statute of limitations on some of these crimes has expired, but others are still prosecutable. More importantly, the current operations at Mitchell Investments continue to perpetuate the original fraud. If exposed, it would mean criminal charges for current management, including your father and sister. I thought about Victoria sitting in her office right now, probably planning how to redecorate the Hamptons house. I thought about my father, who had always dismissed my career choices while praising my sister's business acumen. They had no idea their world was about to shatter. "What do you recommend?" I asked Mr. Whitman. He smiled slightly. "Your grandmother suggested a particular course of action. She believed the best way to handle this was not to go straight to the authorities, but to force the family to make things right. She left specific instructions about how to approach each family member, using the evidence to compel them to participate in making restitution to the fraud victims." I nodded slowly, a plan forming in my mind. "How quickly can you set up a meeting with the family? Tell them it's about additional documents found in grandmother's estate." "I can have everyone here tomorrow afternoon," he replied. "Though I should warn you, once you start this, there's no going back." "I understand," I said, gathering my things. Sometimes the right path isn't the easy one. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my study, reviewing the documents one final time. My phone kept buzzing with messages from Victoria. "Dad's worried about you. Stop being dramatic about the diary thing. Hey, I might sell some of these paintings from the Hamptons house. Want to buy one? Seriously. What are you doing? Answer your phone." Tomorrow, they would all understand exactly what I was doing. Tomorrow, the Mitchell family's carefully constructed facade would begin to crumble. And frankly, they deserved every moment of what was coming. I packed everything into my briefcase, the diary, the key documents, and my grandmother's letter. Then I wrote out my own letter, detailing exactly what would happen if my family refused to cooperate. The evidence wouldn't just expose the historical fraud. It would reveal ongoing criminal activity that could send my father and sister to prison. As I finally lay down to sleep, I thought about my grandmother's words. Some treasures can't be measured in dollars. She had been preparing me for this moment all along, teaching me to value truth over wealth, justice over power. Tomorrow would change everything, and for the first time in my life, I was ready to show my family exactly who I was. Not the disappointment they had always assumed, but the person my grandmother had chosen to carry out justice. The morning of the family meeting dawned bright and clear. I arrived at Mr. Whitman's office an hour early, my grandmother's diary and the evidence carefully arranged on the conference room table. Each folder was labeled, each document highlighted. A paper trail of decades of deception. My family arrived together, exactly as I expected. Victoria swept in first, designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor, followed by our parents. They all wore expressions of mild annoyance, as if this meeting was an inconvenience in their otherwise perfect lives. "This better be important," Victoria said, dropping her Hermes bag onto a chair. I had to reschedule a board meeting for this. My mother's eyes darted around the room, taking in the stacks of papers. "What's all this? I thought we finished with the will." "Please, sit down," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "There's something you all need to see." My father's face tightened as he noticed the diary open on the table. "Sophia, if this is about feeling shortchanged by your inheritance, it's not." I cut him off, sliding the first document across the table. "This is about how grandfather really built the Mitchell fortune." The color drained from my father's face as he read the paper in front of him. It was the original document detailing the Ponzi scheme complete with my grandfather's signature. "Where did you get this?" he demanded, his voice barely a whisper. "Grandmother didn't just keep a diary," I said, pulling out more documents. "She kept evidence. Decades of it. Every transaction, every fraudulent deal, every stolen dollar. All of it carefully documented." Victoria snatched one of the papers, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling slightly. "This is ridiculous. These are just old papers. They don't mean anything." I connected my laptop to the conference room screen, pulling up the digital files. "These are recordings from the last 5 years. Board meetings where you and Dad discussed continuing the fraud. Conversations about hiding money in offshore accounts. Everything." The room fell silent except for the sound of my father's recorded voice discussing how to adjust the latest investment reports. "Turn it off," my mother whispered, her face ashen. I did, but immediately pulled up another document. "This is a list of every person the Mitchell family has stolen from over the last 50 years. Thousands of people who lost their life savings, their retirement funds, their children's college money, all so we could live in luxury." Victoria's composure finally cracked. "You can't prove any of this. It's ancient history." "Actually, I can prove all of it," I replied calmly. "And it's not just history. The fraud is still happening right now, isn't it, Dad?" My father slumped in his chair, suddenly looking every bit of his 60 years. "You don't understand. The scheme, it's too big to unravel now. If this gets out, everything collapses. The company, our reputation, everything we've built." "Everything you stole," I corrected him. "And yes, I understand exactly what happens if this becomes public. That's why we're here." I pulled out another document. This one new, drafted by Mr. Whitman according to my grandmother's instructions. "This is a proposal for making things right, a way to repay the victims without destroying the company completely." Victoria laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "You're blackmailing us? Your own family?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm giving you a chance to fix this before I have no choice but to turn everything over to the authorities." My mother reached for the proposal with shaking hands. "What exactly are you demanding?" "Not demanding, offering. The company will create a restitution fund. Every victim on that list, or their descendants, will be repaid with interest. The Hamptons house, the art collection, the investment portfolios. Everything will be liquidated to begin making repayments." "You can't be serious," Victoria sneered. "That's everything we have." "Not everything," I continued. "The company can survive, but with new leadership and complete transparency. No more fraud, no more schemes. Real investments, real returns." My father leafed through the proposal, his face growing grimmer with each page. "This would take years, millions of dollars. It took years to steal it," I reminded him. "It should take years to make it right." Victoria stood up so suddenly her chair toppled backward. "I won't let you destroy everything we've worked for." "You mean everything you've stolen," I corrected her. "And you don't have a choice. Either sign the agreement now, or I release everything, the documents, the recordings, all of it." "How long do you think you'll last in prison, Victoria? How many of your society friends will stand by you when they learn the truth?" She sank back into her righted chair, the fight draining from her face. My father looked at me with something new in his eyes. Not anger, not even fear, but something close to respect. "Your grandmother, she planned this all along, didn't she? Giving you the diary, keeping all this evidence." I nodded. "She wanted the truth to come out, But she also wanted to give the family a chance to make things right. That's why she chose me. She knew I would do what needed to be done. And if we refuse, my mother asked quietly. I opened my briefcase and pulled out 3 sealed envelopes. Then these go out immediately. 1 to the FBI, 1 to the SEC, and 1 to the New York Times. Everything is already digitized and stored securely. If anything happens to me, it all goes public automatically. Victoria's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. You've thought of everything, haven't you? No, I said softly. Grandmother thought of everything. I'm just carrying out her final wishes. The next few hours were a blur of signatures and legal discussions. Mr. Whitman had already prepared all the necessary paperwork. By sunset, the Mitchell Family Restitution Trust was established, with me as the primary trustee. Victoria and my father would step down from their positions at the company, replaced by independent directors approved by the trust. As my family prepared to leave, looking shell-shocked and defeated, Victoria paused at the door. The diary, it wasn't worthless after all, was it? I smiled, running my hand over its worn leather cover. Some things are worth more than money, Victoria. Grandmother tried to teach us that all along. My father was the last to leave. He stood awkwardly by my chair, looking like he wanted to say something. I never understood you, he finally managed. All these years, I thought you were throwing your life away with your books and teaching. But you're stronger than any of us. It's not about strength, I told him. It's about doing what's right. He nodded slowly. Your grandmother would be proud. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room, emotionally drained, but at peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I typed back a simple response. No, I've fixed everything. There's a difference. Over the next few months, the Mitchell family underwent a transformation. The restitution process began, with teams of accountants tracking down victims and their families. Victoria sold the Hamptons house and moved into a modest apartment. My father, stripped of his position and fortune, finally had to face the consequences of his choices. As for me, I continued teaching at the university, but now I also oversee the restitution trust. It's not an easy job, untangling decades of fraud. Never is, but it's meaningful work. Every time we locate another victim, every time we can return what was stolen, I know I'm honoring my grandmother's legacy. The diary sits on my desk at home now, its pages a reminder that true inheritance isn't measured in dollars and cents. My grandmother left me something far more valuable than money. She left me the chance to make things right. Sometimes at night, I imagine her watching all of this unfold, smiling that knowing smile of hers. She always said I would understand someday why she spent so much time teaching me about truth and justice. Now I do. Last week, I received an unexpected letter from Victoria. Inside was a check for her last bonus from the company and a short note. This should go to the victims too. You were right. Some things are worth more than money. Maybe there's hope for the Mitchell family after all, not as wealthy socialites or powerful executives, but as something better. People trying to make amends for their mistakes. The diary that everyone thought was worthless turned out to be priceless, not because of the secrets it contained, but because of the truth it revealed. Sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones that help us become better people, even if the path to getting there isn't easy. As I sit in my grandmother's old study, now mine since the family had to sell the mansion, I realize that this was her real legacy. Not the money, not the power, but the courage to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. The story of the Mitchell family isn't over. In many ways, it's just beginning. But this time, it's a story of redemption rather than deception, of making amends rather than making profits. And that's worth more than all the riches in the world.